in order to set up TypeScript, we're going to go to we're already in the root folder. So we'll install TypeScript like so. And then we're going to need some configuration. And TypeScript is heavily configurable, so that can be a bit of a jungle to navigate. I tend to use, there's a package on NPM called tsconfig, which has a bunch of recommended configurations that I tend to use, as long as I can at least. And TypeScript configurations are quite easy to append to. So we're going to be doing that. So we're going to be starting just with a recommended configuration. So I'll add this package, tsconfig/recommended. You can see it's been added there. And I can now create a TypeScript configuration in the root folder here. So I'll make tsconfig.json file here. And I'll just say this should extend the recommended tsconfig, and I think I need to specify like so. So this is a very basic now. We're simply using the tsconfig recommended setup. The package has recommended for specific setups like node specific versions and other things. But this is a fine place to start, and I like to do this and just expand whenever it's necessary. One of the things we're going to want to do immediately is we want to tell TypeScript about our packages, specifically our schema package. The reason why we're doing this is that it helps our IDE. So if you're using any IDE like Visual Studio Code that has the TypeScript language server, you can go to definition or go to implementation. And it's just a bit nicer when TypeScript knows about where that package is, so it won't just try and go into the node modules folder and look at the .d.ts file. So we can do that by extending it with compiler options, and we'll add first a base URL that says packages, and we will add a paths entry, and that here we will refer to our schema package, and that needs to be an array, and that is the path to our schema package. Now TypeScript should be able to go to the definition of anything in the schema package by actually going to the folder where it's implemented instead of the node modules folder. This is obviously in the root, so this is not actually what any of our projects are going to be using. What we need to do is to create specific tsconfigs in the folders for our project. So let's create one in the backend folder. I should mention maybe that TSC, the TypeScript compiler, has an init function just the way we used npm init and git init for that matter. That can create a tsconfig file for you, and you can specify some things there, and you will get a nicely formatted configuration file with lots of comments in it. So it's fairly easy to navigate. I just find that when I'm using these recommended configurations, it's much easier to create the configuration file by hand like I'm doing at the moment. So you could be using tsc-init, but we'll just be doing this like so. So what I need to do now for my backend TypeScript configuration file is reference the root tsconfig here, which again then references the recommended configuration. So it's a little bit of a chain of configurations, but it works perfectly fine. So here we will start by adding an extends. We will say that it extends. This is the services folder. This is the root folder, tsconfig.json. And then we can now add some specific things to our backend configuration. And the only thing that we really need to add here is we want the library to just be ESNext, because we simply want to just use the latest version of the JS libraries. This is something you can change if you find that your setup, for whatever reason, doesn't work with this library. But as it is, we're going to be using this. And then we will specify an out directory. So this is where the compiler will add everything. And we want this to go into dist folder, like so. Finally, we want to include everything in the source folder, which we don't actually have yet, but we can create one of those. Let's just copy all of this and create a similar tsconfig file in the schema folder. The only thing I want to add here is that because the schema is a shared library that's going to be referenced from the backend and the front end, we want declarations created. So this is option in the compiler options as well. So declarations mean a .d.ts file which specifies the types of things, and we want that created for our schema so that all those types that we're going to be referencing are actually available to us. Right. We obviously need to set up TypeScript for our front end as well. But the reason I'm not doing anything for the front end just yet is that we're going to be using Vite, which is the bundler, for creating a sort of a scaffolding for our front end. And that includes some various configurations, both for linting but also for TypeScript. So we're going to be using that first, and then we'll be refining it a little bit from there. So this is a good start for the backend and the schema configuration. We want to make sure that the schema configuration or the schema is referenced correctly. So we'll go into the package.json and change this. So we are not going to be having our index.js in just the root folder of the schema package. It's going to be in the dist folder, which doesn't exist right now, but TypeScript will create that for us. And we will add to this that there will be types going into the dist folder as well. All right, so now the schema package should specify correctly that the types and the compiled output will be sitting in the dist folder.
If you want to keep learning about how to build real-world apps with the latest technologies and other career-related topics, then start right now by subscribing to our channel and liking this video.